Test, test, test. 1, 2.
Yeah, I was supposed to use my flash board on Friday afternoon, and I got it to snow on Saturday.
Okay,
Pleasure to meet you.
I think it's time.
Right there on the north side, right at the stop.
I think we're there, it's time. I don't have
Yeah,
to
we used to.
Hey, Tanya. It is that time. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the mid-monthly work session for Wednesday, March the 16th. It's nice to see so many smiling faces, as I always say. At this time, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Here.
Ms. Pillion. Here. Ms. Kletch. Here. Mayor White.
Here.
Let the record reflect Mr. Anderson is absent.
At this time, we're going to take up the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask Councilman Mike Owens to lead us, if he would.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. And that brings us to the approval of the agenda. I think we do have one minor change we're going to make to the agenda. And it would be an appointment to the newly established Veterans Advisory Board. I'm going to add that under item L after the closed session. And I would allow the council to make that motion if possible.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Owens to add the appointment of a member to the Veterans Advisory Board under item L. So we'll call that L2.
I'll second that.
A second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Billion? Aye. Ms. Quetch? Aye. And Mayor Webb?
Aye. That brings us to public comments. Kim, do we have anybody signed up for public comments
I'm sorry,
today?
sir.
Sure.
Have no.
No one? Don't have anybody signed up for public comments. So that brings us to new business. And we are delighted, under new business, we do have a presentation about the Sinking Spring Cemetery, or by the Sinking Spring Cemetery Committee. I would welcome you all to come up and give us that wonderful presentation.
Are you going first?
I'll go second.
Well,
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and have a report for the Sinking Springs Cemetery. I want to make clear that the report is an annual report to the council, and the annual report is for 2021. But the report does reflect several concerns and complaints from past years that we've had related to the operation of the cemetery. As you look at that report, it could be viewed as a negative report. Perhaps it is, but it documents an ongoing crisis there that we feel needs attention, and we hope to be able to deal with that today. I do want to point out that this is the past. Currently, we are having an opportunity to talk with Matt Henderson and with Michael and their positions, and they are not responsible for anything you see out there today. So, our objective is to inform you council members the problems at Sinking Spring Cemetery, recommend some changes related to procedures, policies, and particularly an attitude about protecting a very sacred resource, a historical resource that's nearly 250 years old and is owned by the town. To do that, I have, hopefully we can work this. These are some of the issues we have out there. These have been hit by mowers and glanced in this case, but there are a number of monuments that are knocked off their base that can be repaired, and we're going to be looking at that. This one was hit rather forcefully. I'm amazed that that broke like that, but that also can be repaired with the proper people, a proper epoxies and that sort of thing. This one is an example of how it was and then the way it is today. And I've been asked about, well, don't you have many before and after shots? No, they never told us which ones they were going to break ahead of time. These are simply moved on their base. It's a glancing shot as they went by, and you can see it was pushed over. There are ways to repair those with epoxy. Carefully move them back onto where they should be. This is a case up here in the corner of one that's been knocked off its base and shoved back. The issue here is, why was there a large mower operating in that small family plot? They couldn't help but hit something when they tried to turn around in there. So the object there is, let's be more careful. Another one that's been knocked back, but once again, these can be repaired. Foot stones. These are at the, particularly in the older section, these are at the base of the grave. And they're usually down low on the ground. And they are usually hit and chipped, and there's no way to repair those. We need to face the whole issue. I don't know how they got up high on hitting that one, but they did. This one, it looks like they just took the mower and went down a road. and just started clipping them down as they went, either knocking them off or going over them. Rather careless. This is my poster for you. Here is a family grave. The outline of the grave is marked. The footstone is marked, yet the mower went straight across it and chipped everything down. At least these can't be repaired. But it's the carelessness in operating a machine and understanding that this is sacred ground out there to many people. And we are entrusted with it. This one I put on here because somehow it was twice hit. It knocked first trip through, they hit the base, knocked the top off. It was repaired, and it came back within a couple of weeks, and it was down on the ground again, and it was repaired. There's your problem. A large mower in a confined space, going very fast and not aware of where they are. And they're out there where there are a number of family plots, and you can see the curves. Pick this one out because if you looked on either side of his mower, you'll see the before and after. Over on this side, or he has knocked over the one that was upright. The one over on this side, it's being pushed even further askew. Had no business back there in that kind of a corner. This one is simply more of the footstones, and from what I understand, of course, these are part of the regulations and simply say that the town will take all reasonable precautions to protect lot owners and the property right of lot owners from loss of damage. And from my understanding is that the town is saying we own the cemetery, but the individual heirs own the marker in the lot. So we are interested in how do we treat the markers, whether they're to be repaired. Some of the markers out there need to be simply cleaned, and we need to go ahead and figure out what are procedures for a cleaning by competent people that know what they do with the right materials, and we do have some. I'm asking you as council members, in viewing this report, of putting yourself in the place of an heir who go out there and they find that their great-great-grandfather's plot has been either broken or marked off its base, or the footstones have been ground up. It's a sacred place to a lot of people. So, we didn't come, that's the report. Now we go to the good news. And Donna Marie is going to tell you about what we hope to do with the cooperation of the town and with some of our newly appointed people like Matt.
Thank you, Rick.
Donna, do you mind going?
Oh, sure.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
How do we turn that thing off?
It's fine, I'll get it.
Hi, guys. Donna Marie Emmer. Glad to meet you all. I am the chair of the cemetery committee, and we do have good stuff. So we've got a problem, and the best way with the problem is to find ways to fix it. I'm hoping, well, I hope your copy looks a lot better than mine, that this sheet, whatever, was part of your packet. Yeah, you're so good, this went out. And you, I hope, will have seen, this is the Sinking Spring Cemetery Revitalization Project for 22 through 25. We're not looking at anything short-term here. I mean, in 3 years is actually pretty short-term. This is going to be a first go at it. What we are attempting to do is, first of all, we recognize what we've got out there, which is something pretty special. And to me, I mean, those folks in that graveyard, I mean, I don't have anybody there myself, but I feel like I know those people because I've talked about them now for over 25 years in ghost stories. So, you know, I've got a tag in there, I've got a pull. I also know this is one of the top 10 tourist draws to this town. Who knew? Who knew? With all this in mind, we've got some current needs. And actually, I feel like in a way, this is kind of like the magic wand section. Improved training protocol. That's already being started because Matt Henderson and Mike love you guys. We know that we are going to have a dedicated crew to the cemetery. You guys got us a new special lawnmower for out there. Yes, with smaller decks so stuff doesn't get mutilated. Not everything is done by mowers, we know that. This is an old cemetery. This is 250 years old. The location is not the best. It's right, cut in half by a major artery, coming into town. There's lots of stuff going on. I have realized recently we're not going to be able to revitalize this cemetery. What we need to do is stabilize it. Because at 250 years old, it's going to be a tough one. But we've got new equipment coming in. Again, thank you guys through the town. One of the things that we would like to know about is getting all the gates locked at night. We don't know, they're always open, and I get it, there's the ball fields over there, fly ball, somebody's got to run in, grab it, whatever. The gates don't ever get locked, and that's both for the west and the east cemetery. So that needs to be clarified. I have no idea how to do that. Groundhog control. Have you walked through there recently? It looks like the zombies are coming up. I was just talking to Rick about Colonel W.T. Bradley. There's a mound of orange clay that would make any Southerner proud. That's because the groundhogs have moved in and are now living down in the ground with Colonel W.T. Bradley. We got to do something about those guys. Repair the east cemetery fencing. That's already being taken care of. These guys are good. We got bamboo coming in on the other one. There's no ordinance on the town books for bamboo. And unless you've ever dealt with bamboo, you don't think about it. I have it on my property. Napalm can't get rid of that stuff. So it needs to be gotten rid of. And also to start research for uprighting stones. I contacted a young man who was recommended to me from DHR, which is the Department of Historic Resources. And he told me that earlier this year in a cemetery in Virginia, a woman was killed. She was out cleaning a tombstone and it fell on her. 2 tons, my friends, of marble landed on this lady. The only thing that keeps most of these stones in place is gravity. I did not know that myself. So we've got to get these stones where they've been for decades. But I've got a fella I've located who can help us move these stones. You think you can just pick them up and put them back? It doesn't quite work that way. So, our requests from you guys. We need to find out about getting better entrances into the East Cemetery. More than anything is to get the public aware of what we've got. And it's up to you all, if you will allow us. We, as a committee, will go and strong arm our friends, our families, our folks that we know into helping us get this cemetery back into shape. And the best way that we've seen to do it is for public awareness. 250th anniversary of Sinking Springs Presbyterian Church. That's a milestone. This is good PR for us, not just for our committee, but of course for the town. If we've got some stuff going on in there, we can advertise. We can let folks know what we're attempting to do. We've already got groups reaching out to us saying, hey, let us go into the cemetery and, help you do stuff. And we're more than willing to do so. We've just got to know where to start and exactly what we can do. We want to have public events for cleaning for Decorations Day, and that's the best cemetery to do it. And we ask too that town council seeks out the CLG grants. We're a special town. Of course, we know that because we live here. But the CLG grants are only available to certain areas, and we are one of those certain areas because of our history. So we can get money. Basically, what happens with these is that you guys provide 30%, the state gives us 70%. Then DHR comes and oversees the work. And that's a real short version of it. But those monies can be given to us. I think the deadline for the ones that I'm speaking of is April 1st, so I think we're cutting it a little thin for this year. But for next year, we can get some change to get some of this stuff taken care of. And the main thing that I really want you to think about that I have on here is use your committee members. We're willing to do stuff. We don't want to just say, here, thump, throw it on the table. We want to help because there's no one in here who doesn't love that cemetery. And we're willing to do as much as we possibly can to help. So we've got a funding request. It always takes money. I think this is a cheap date, frankly. $3 grand. Got it broken down into some stuff. Some cleaning supplies. Monument repair. Excuse me. Promotion. A map of the cemetery. The layout of the thing. Workshop expenses. Because my big dream is to get everybody in the town, especially the churches, not just in the town, but in the county and even up into Smith County and surrounding places that have connections into Abingdon. I want to be able to invite them to say, please come to these workshops. Because even if you don't help us clean our graveyard, you can take this information back to your church and your community and use this. And it's all provided by, ta-da, Town of Abingdon. I think it's a great plan. Of course I do. So, that's what I've got. Do I have any questions for myself or Rick? Amanda's thinking.
Amanda's got a question.
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
Thank you so
So
much.
a little bit of history, and I've been to a couple meetings of the committee and shared some thoughts about this, but the town didn't own any part of the cemetery until 2006. That was the part that the church owned, and there's a deed from the church to the town. Apparently the town was maintaining the property from the 80s on, and eventually somebody said, I guess, since the town is taking care of it, why doesn't it own it? And so the church deeded part of the cemetery to the town. But the cemetery itself had other parts of it that were owned by just private citizens. So there's a separate part of it that combined is called the Scott Cambell edition. And so that came from Sammy Campbell's family, and the Scott family was John Bundy's mother, Muriel's family, and it came through that line. So apparently around that time in 2006, Ms. Hutton actually, I think, did most of the title work at the time and discovered that, I think everybody just assumed that the church owned the whole thing, and they did the title work and realized that it didn't. And so some deeds were drafted for the town to obtain the Scotts and the Campbell's portion of it. But there also is a separate edition that is called the Penn edition from George Penn of Penn Stewart and Fields Penn House and other things. And I'm still not sure who owns that, Don Marie or anybody else knows either. The Penns probably. But the way it works, I think generally is, and Miss Luke is now on the cemetery committee, and obviously she's got a lot more direct involvement with how cemeteries and sales and that sort of thing work from the business owner's mortuary standpoint. But the town didn't sell any of these plots to anybody. We acquired the property after they were already 200-year-old graves on it. But for instance, the Campbells sold plots to individual people just as private citizens. So every little piece of this could have a different title history. So it's going to be difficult probably to figure all that out. I think generally, let's talk about just the church part. the town owns the underlying property. Basically, what the people who have plots there own is kind of a license, and it's just, you have the right to be buried there. So many people can fit in that particular plot. I talked to Mr. Frost about this and Ms. Luke about this. Apparently there's no, I thought there would be some state regulation about how many people you could bury in one spot. Apparently there's not. As close as you can fit them, I think is basically was the answer. By convention, I think according to Mr. Frost and Mr. Campbell prior to him, they had 3 feet in between and that sort of thing, and so that's how the graves are laid. But each individual plot may have some different varying right that we would never know unless you went all the way through and did the title search on each individual plot and how it came into existence. So to Donna Marie's plan, which I think is all great, but I don't think the town has the individual right to go to pick a name off the list of the history of Abingdon and say, we're gonna go in there and fix your headstone, because it's not ours. So I'm not sure what the mechanism of that is. The risk probably of some of these graves that are 250 years old, if somebody's objecting to fixing is probably low, but it's not zero. So that from a permission title standpoint is what concerns me. I think there was some discussion at the last meeting I wasn't at about whether that would require written permission or oral permission. I don't think that there's any law about it one way or the other, but if you call somebody on the phone and say, hey, can I fix your granny's grave? And they say, sure, and then they get mad later, then you've got no proof if it's not in writing. So obviously that's why courthouse exists and particular property records exist and are recorded. So hyper-technically, I think that's what it would take, is go through and get permission from everybody who is there and doing the title searches. I'm sure that these, particularly Mr. Morgan and people who work with the Historical Society know it would be a gargantuan task to find out who all these people are. So
I actually have a short answer.
okay.
I had talked to a young fella, he's not DHR, but he's DHR approved, and it would be the one who has actually asked to do workshops for us. We're obviously not the only cemetery around who's got this problem. Think about it. And I asked him, I said, so what do we do? And he said, in the past with other cemeteries he has worked with, since we are working in good faith, and that was the big underline, legal ads in the paper and letting people know. He said that, and I'll get more information on what he knows about that. But it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a simple fix. If we do know families, we can reach out to them. But if we put the ads in the paper, just like you would any other legal thing, and if you also get the word out that this is what we're getting ready to do, and this is our timeline that we're working with, that should cover us. And I know you don't like the word should, I'm sure.
Well,
But
I was gonna suggest, obviously, Tyler is conspicuously absent, but DHR or people like that who deal with this all the time, that we reach out to them and try to find out how other people have done it.
Yeah.
And maybe there is a statute that says that, I mean, technically, you have to have a statutory way to give people
Right.
notice
Notice.
by newspaper or otherwise. And if that's true, that's great.
Yeah.
That's was some of the conversation that we've had in the past, and that's
Right.
just sort of the background to why we are where we are and why I don't think that we can just go out and start fixing stuff.
Excuse me, but after we had our conversation, I did get back with a couple of families that are the heirs out there. And they agree with you from the standpoint that get the permission, because if we go out and just clean stones, some family may say, no.
No.
I like it dirty like that. It shows it's 200
it's
years old.
old.
Right.
So I think that part, in terms of cleaning, we're going down that line right now. In terms of fixing some of those that are simply knocked off their base that you saw, that was done by the town. And I think the town has an obligation, whether it's legal or moral, to put them back the way it was, regardless of getting permission. you know that any heir is gonna say, yeah, I'll put it back, and by the way, why don't you knock it over?
Plus, it's also gonna help our guys who are on their mowing.
Sure. And I think the discussion was, and Mr. Morgan acknowledged that during his presentation, that Mr. Henderson's new to this position, and he wasn't aware of any mowers knocking it over, but they were gonna double down on being super careful and bought this new mower, et cetera. And if that happens in the future, I'm sure that Matt will let us know and we can address it at the time. Let the record reflect that somebody agreed with me during the public meeting.
I got a curiosity question that probably nobody in this room can answer. A privately owned cemetery, if plots were sold and a marker was put there today, 300 years from now, all those people, and the cemetery's full,
Right.
all those people in the past are way gone. And these stones are going to deteriorate naturally anyway.
Right.
Who's responsible for those stones? Or is nobody responsible? I'm curious.
It's a good question.
My guess is that if you bought a plot now, that there are varying levels of how involved you want the owner of the underlying property to be. And if you wanted to pay the Ferrises $700 a month, then they would, clean it every day. But there are probably varying levels of how much they're gonna keep up with it and that sort of thing. And that's part of kind of the deal when you buy the plot.
But 300 years later, all that's.
Well, back then, they probably didn't think that they would still exist now, those stones. And I don't think that anybody gave any thought to them. The deeds that I have seen just describe very generally the plot. Lot A1 is what you got, and no other description at all. So there, I don't think that the property records or otherwise maintained for the, say anything about the maintenance of them going forward or who's in charge or that sort of thing. I just don't think anybody thought about it. But I mean, the church is the one for the main part who set up the cemetery, and maybe there are church records somewhere, but the gist of it is probably nobody thought of it then, and so we own it now and we'll have to deal with it probably.
I guess overall, it is up to us as a town, what do we want to do with this? So, I know what we would like to do with it, because we do have a variety of reasons why we love it so much. And, that cemetery, the names on those tombstones are the names on our streets. And if no other reason than just civic pride, to see what we can do. And like I said earlier, it's not that we're gonna be able to revitalize anything, it's just be able to stabilize. And some of this stuff's an easy fix. Of course, when you look at tombstones, it's like, just, can you pick it up and put it back? Well, when you're dealing with 500 pounds, probably not. But it's finding the people who've got the equipment, and actually I found the guy who can do it, can come in and do this. It's what we wanna do. So ultimately, it kind of comes down to you guys. You tell us what we want. Well, wait a minute, that was a Freudian slip. Tell us what you want. And then, if we can, we'll move heaven and earth to make it happen. So, that's what I've got to say. Anybody else?
I suggest that I work with Mayana and Tyler, and we can reach out to DHR and see what expertise they can share with us, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming and presenting.
Thank you guys
Absolutely.
for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
You're okay. I just volunteered.
All right.
Kim?
We'll get you. Thank
And
you.
happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Thanks,
I
guys.
took the last time out.
All right, so that brings us to a discussion regarding current permit fees. Mayana Rice, you are on the hot seat.
Okay, Mayana Rice, Director of Community Development. So as we have been going through our budget cycle, we have been told that, we need to cut as much as possible. And so, one of the things that, I had looked at, I think earlier, this year, at some point I was looking at the fees we were taking in and looking at the amount of money that these projects were like costing a developer. And I was like, are we taking a $25 permit for a $350,000 project? And so I kind of dug in a little bit further, and if we look at services that we provide the community, essentially, you've got taxes and a few other revenue streams. But there are a few other fees that really come into the town. And development is one of those areas where we are providing a service because people want something to be done. A little different than, streets and some of the other things that we would be required to have as services. And so I took a little deeper look. I talked to Tyler, again, conveniently absent, and said, well, what are the things that we're all doing where people are coming to us and asking for a service, and we're providing that. So I did a summary here for you all to talk about the different fees, or the different applications that come through the office, the fees, or in the case of a lot of these, no fees are being taken for actions that are being requested. And so I collected that information here for you. Some of the things, it's not necessarily that there'd be so much additional revenue, but, we have things that people, in some ways, I would say kind of take a little bit of an abuse when they come in repeatedly for something where there's no fee attached to it, giving us sort of like partial things in order to, kind of get us to help with the process. And in those cases, it'd be great if we could charge inspection fees and then follow-up inspection fees if we, if Rick goes out there and finds out things haven't been done. We have sign permits, we have planning applications, site plan review for commercial projects. Right now, we don't have a commercial site plan review fee. So, for example, we have Dunkin' Donuts that we've been working on for months, and there isn't really a site plan review fee. The only fee we end up taking is through the building department. And so there's just a lot of gaps and areas where our fees are either non-existent or they're quite a bit lower than most other communities around us. So on page 4, you can see Rick took 2 projects, a residential one and a commercial one, just sample projects. The cost and the sources, he tried to keep them all like relatively similar. And you can see in these cases, Abingdon's fees, the total permit fee, comes in quite low compared to the surrounding communities. So if you look at the residential project, you'll see that in Abingdon, it would have cost this person $314 total dollars. In Washington County, it would cost them $581. So if you look at the city of Bristol, it would have cost them $1,348. So there's quite a bit of space in between what is being charged and what other communities are charging. And so my question today is really, would you like us to draft a new proposed fee schedule for the upcoming year? If you have interest in that, then I will, dig deeper and try to come up with reasonable, we're not gonna jump from $314 to $1,400, but looking at reasonable increases, things like driveway permits, $0, but, average in Virginia communities that are around us, $50. Encroachment permits, $0. We have a wide variety of different type of encroachment permits in communities around us that are sometimes even based on like how many days you're going to use it. So, for example, we have a construction project down here that has had a cover over the sidewalk for a couple of years, I think, at this point. So there's just some, there's some situations here where not only is it just looking at the bottom line, but it is also looking at the equity for taxpayers, because these are projects that are being started and worked on by people who ultimately want to develop in the community. So it's a little different than, saying some service that we need to provide. So that's the start.
I think it's something that we need to explore and go down that road. A quick question I got,
Sure.
though, to help other people understand some of these. Could you give us an example of an encroachment and a land disturbance, and we know what a driveway permit is, but could you give us an example of that so the people that are listening?
Sure. So an encroachment permit ranges from a variety of different things, but specifically it's when somebody wants to close down the road to do work. So it could be an alley, it could be a portion of the sidewalk, it could be any basic public right-of-way where they're coming in and they say, we need to close down the road, we need to divert traffic, we need to, and there is a review process that we go through. We have an employee, Hagan, who, looks at each of these and says, can it be done? What's the date it's going to be done on? We actually have a permit that gets pulled for that work. And so that's what an encroachment permit would take into account.
And a land disturbance.
So land disturbance is when somebody wants to grade a site. And so it's greater than
10,000 square feet.
10,000 square feet. So when they want to move dirt greater than 10,000 square feet, usually that involves taking an engineered drawing and actually looking at it and making sure that the runoff isn't going to go into the creek, or that there won't be any other disturbance to off-site, so you're not disturbing your neighbors if you're moving that much dirt. So.
And the driveway permit would be cutting, curbing
Yep.
from off our right of way.
Exactly.
Question.
Sure.
When was the fee schedule last updated?
It doesn't seem like it's been updated in over 10 years.
And compound inflation in that period of time is fairly substantial.
I agree. And if you.
Good Lord question that you already knew the answer before you Well done.
And in some municipalities, in some municipalities, you're not actually allowed to have a building department, like an actual, where you take building permits, unless it can pay for itself. That is a common theme both across the country as well as in some other communities in Virginia. So you take your, building department budget, divide it by your total construction value, and then you create a permit fee based on your averages that you take in. Because again, it's a little different than services that are required. These services are all related to specific projects.
I think the applications are more detailed when you have a charge, and I'll give you an example with the Historic Preservation Review Board. Years ago when I was on that board, there was a fee,
Okay.
and now there's not. And the applications come in the past, Diana's really cleaned that up a lot. Most of them were never completed appropriately, and then they were prepared when they came in, and we'd have to table it till another meeting, so then there was a backlog of applications, so to speak. So if there's a fee charge, then they're more inclined to get it right the first time, so to speak. So I can see the advantage of doing that for that.
Yeah, and for example, a sign permit is $1 a square foot. It's almost not really worth taking a permit when you're looking at $1 a square foot. And so in some scenarios, I think there'd also be a greater respect, not only for the application process, but also, that work doesn't get completed ahead of time, because it's like, oh, there was a $25 permit I was supposed to get. Okay, I'll get it now. And we find varied compliance, I guess one would say. I mean, we've had some of our developers who've been long-standing, and we have to put stop work orders in because they're like, oh, I thought I got the permit. So even having a little higher fee does also demand, or equate to more of like, okay, yeah, I see this person is coming out and spending hours on my project, so,
So you'll have this done by the 4th?
yeah.
Well, it sounds like we need to take a look at it, is what I'm hearing.
And that's the question, yeah. If you all said, not this year, come back next year, then I just wouldn't dig into it any further. But if you said, yeah, it sounds like maybe we are a little, like that we could look at some increases or changes in the fee schedule, then I'll present something to you.
Council, can we give her a consensus? Or?
Yeah.
Do we need to make a motion?
I don't think we need to make a motion at this point in time, just to give you guidance, is that
Yeah,
what I'm hearing?
that'll
Okay.
work.
Yeah, well, you have our permission then.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That brings us to consideration of bids. Number 1 is professional services to perform structural engineering and cost analysis for rehabilitation of trestles 1 through 15 of the Virginia Creek Patrol. Mr. Surratt.
Mayor, council members, January we put out an RFP for proposals for structural engineering and analysis for the Creepy Trail trestles. We got those proposals back. We had 5 respondents. Had a review committee go through them, score them, and there was a majority consensus on the firm we selected, which was Prosim. And it's in your packet. I think y'all have the score sheets of everybody's scoring, and we just would like you all to give us the guidance on whether to move forward and consider their proposal for Creepy Trail trestles.
Council, what questions do we have for Mike? No questions at all?
I'm usually full of questions.
So if my mind serves me correct, that group is semi-local, correct?
Yes.
Aren't they out of Marion, is that right?
Yeah, they have an office in there.
Okay, that's what I thought. And you felt comfortable with
Yeah.
the services they offer?
Yes, sir.
Well, if there's no other questions, I think let's move on.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Do we need a motion for that, Mike?
I think we
Yeah,
do.
Okay.
So I think we need a motion to authorize Mr. Surratt and the town manager to complete negotiations and enter into an agreement with the winner of the scoring Prosim.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So I would entertain a motion, council, just like Cam stated.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Motion by Mr. Owens to allow the town manager and Mike to enter into negotiations.
And enter into an agreement.
Enter into agreement for the professional services, and a second by Ms. Pillitt. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Pillion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch? Aye. And Mayor Webb?
Aye. That was easy enough, Mike,
Uh,
but don't go anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
Because number 2 is Hutton Street / Rugby Terrace Sidewalk Improvements Project.
Yes, sir. So we engaged with our on-call, the Lane Group, to do the bid documents and put out the the ITB for Hutton Street Rugby Terrace Sidewalk to make that connection. They conducted the bid opening on March the 8th, and the low bidder was Mooring Contractors, and the low bid was $175,550. We had 2 bids come in on that, and the other one was a little bit higher than that, but they were the low bidder. I would ask that you make a motion and accept their bid to do that construction of that sidewalk.
Sorry.
Do you know when that was advertised?
That was advertised in the 1st of February.
Of this year?
Yes.
Thank you.
I know that's a project we've all been kind of waiting for.
Yes,
quite
we've been
some
trying to get
time.
it, we've been trying to get it
Yeah,
on
that's,
the books and get it constructed,
yeah.
and trying to get it done before the end of the fiscal year.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I can remember running that section. That's it,
Yes.
yeah. In high school, 20-something years ago, running that section
Yes.
of dirt. Remember that, Cam? That little tiny squiggly path?
I was there a lot earlier than you.
Come on, man, come on.
So it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
It's gonna
fantastic.
happen.
I don't know if you took the lead on that, but if you did, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I think it was the whole team, me, Tyler, the whole Kevin Morley, who were working with the Lane Group to get it all out there. Considering the environment we're in right now, I mean, it was the team effort to get it done, and Ms. Quetch and the infrastructure committee who really kept, pushing it forward.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, council, I think he needs a motion to allow them to accept the contract from,
I'd
is it
love to make that.
Mooring?
Mooring contractors?
Contractors, yeah. So, got a motion by Vice Mayor Quetch to accept the contract by Mooring Contractors. And Cam, do we need to read that amount again, or since it's already been stated? Okay, fantastic. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Council, any discussion? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Billion? Aye. Ms. Quetch? Aye. And Mayor Webb?
Aye. And we'll clap on that one, because that was good.
Well, hopefully we get it done before end of the fiscal year.
That's it. Thank you.
And that's the
Thank
schedule.
you.
All right, that brings us to first readings of ordinances. We have an ordinance reading today, first reading of amended ordinance of the council for the town of Abingdon, Virginia, to enact the Veterans Advisory Board and to add an appointment. Mr. Bell.
Yes, sir. The council just adopted this ordinance at the last regular meeting. It was decided that there should have been one more slot for that 2025 class of members. So the amendment just says it's amended and adds another slot for that.
Okay. Council, any questions for Mr. Bell? It's pretty self-explanatory. All right, so I take it, Cam, we can go ahead and adopt the ordinance and dispel with the second reading of the ordinance to
If someone so moves,
expedite?
yes, sir.
Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to do so.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Motion by Mr. Owens, and just to clarify, that's to adopt the ordinance as it is and dispel with the second reading, correct? Okay, excellent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Ms. Billion? Aye. Ms. Quetch? Aye. And Mayor Webb?
Aye. Easy enough. Don't have any unfinished business that I know of. Miscellaneous business and communications from the town manager. Anything, Earl, that we need to think about?
No, I don't believe so. It's been a great first couple of weeks, and I have to say that I've been so warmly received. It's been particularly gratifying for me to walk into this situation and have and just hit the ground running, and people are keeping me running.
We hope so. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Well, thank you again for being here. You're doing a great job so far. I've heard nothing but good things. Council, any reports?
Can I ask questions to them through the reports? I just-
Sure.
On the Park Street, I know we're doing land acquisition, I guess? or
Yes, we are in
easement,
right-of-way
right-of-way.
acquisition.
How's that progressing along? Do you have any idea? I know this is a surprise question.
Again, since Tyler's not. Tyler's technically the lead on that
I got a
project.
letter, I'm probably on Park Street, and I got a letter about land acquisition
Yeah, do you
this
know,
week.
have we sent letters out to all the property owners already? I assume
I think
we
we
have.
are engaged with 3B right now, and I think they are moving forward with it.
Okay.
I got a
My last
letter.
conversation with Tyler said
Good.
that, yeah, they are currently moving forward with right-of-way acquisition.
So let Tyler know that I asked.
Well,
Yeah, I
then
got a letter and it just had a number to call
Yeah.
if I had questions or whatever, so
You
I was pleased.
Donate your.
Yeah, that's it, right? I don't know where Tyler is, but I bet his ears are burning.
I don't want all of it.
Fair enough.
And part of that, Dr. Owens, is identifying who the owners are and make sure that if we have to negotiate, that we negotiate with the people who actually own the property. So that's going to be the first stage that we're engaged in. And depends on what it is that we're taking, how far back we have to go. Generally just current owners, but there's some that we're going to actually have, instead of just getting a temporary easement or a permanent easement, take some of it in fee, and that takes a little bit further back look, so that part will take a little bit longer, but all that should be done relatively soon.
Glad we're making progress on
I
Park
know-
Street as well.
I know the goal was to be done by this fall of the acquisitions if possible.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're still on track.
Yep.
That is still the goal.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Mike.
Can I ask another sidewalk question? Sorry.
Only if you do it as a report.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. I know we've talked about a couple of different times and in a couple of different ways about sidewalks by the high school on
Thompson Drive.
on Thompson Drive, and I know part of that is county, and part of that, there was another group that was working on that. And not Thompson Drive, what, I'm drawing a complete blank, the road that goes down and connects with Baldwin Road.
On Boone Street.
Boone Street, yes, because this morning I was driving my kids to school and there was a kid on a scooter, and it made me very nervous. And I thought, I'm an adult driver, we have all these kids driving to school, and we have kids on scooters,
Yes.
driving on the narrow shoulder of the road, and it made me very nervous. So I just it triggered my memory.
So there is a transportation alternative program application through VDOT. Currently, it's still in scoring. We should hear back when they finish scoring, whether it makes it or not, probably before the end of our fiscal year,
Okay.
because it is on the VDOT timeline. So we've done everything that we needed to do to submit the application,
Just wait.
make it as viable as possible, and now it's, currently in VDOT scoring.
Yeah, I think that goes right along with the Hutton Street, with kids going to and
It's
from
true.
school.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of that whole situation. But yes, the
From-
past 2 times I've driven through there, I've been very nervous about kids.
From a budgetary standpoint, you just heard that from the corner of Rugby Terrace to Hutton Street, which is 50 yards, is going to be $175,000. So,
Which is why we're trying to get help from
something to keep
VDOT.
in mind.
Right, but that's why we're trying to get a grant from
They
VDOT,
went
right?
around and about though,
Yes.
and just do a straight shot.
And I think the amount that we put in there for
It's gonna
cost of
make it
construction
fun.
for everything is it's like $1.5 million.
Okay, and is some of that responsibility the county's responsibility, the part on Thompson Drive, right? Because from what I understand is the town does, it's kind of wonky, the town doesn't own all of that, the county actually owns the
Right.
frontage.
For Thompson Drive, the
Sidewalks.
town doesn't own right-of-way from Boone Street to the high school. We assume the maintenance from VDOT, pavement, but we cannot construct or do a VDOT project, anything like that we don't own right-of-way in.
Okay,
So unless the school or the school board, or Washington County Schools, is willing to dedicate us right-of-way, along that street to do improvements, then we could do that.
and that's what they need to do, they need to dedicate, because I talked to at least one school board member who said that they are very interested in doing anything they can to contribute.
We did get them to commit right away for a smart scale project, that's Stanley Street in Thompson,
Okay,
and that one is gonna be constructed, it's approved, so it's currently in the 6-year plan
okay,
to make that roundabout and improve Thompson Drive right there. But for the rest of it, we would really need them to dedicate right away for the rest of that street for us
Okay.
to do anything in it, but we do the maintenance on the street itself,
Okay.
the asphalt course.
okay, thank you so much for answering my question.
Good question, good question. Council, any other reports or questions that we'd like to ask, or? Not to Mike, then.
All right.
Nobody can ask Mike any other
I'm here all
questions?
He's in the hot seat.
All right.
I wanted to thank Tanya for sending us that email on the tourism, I don't know what that's called.
Earned media.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Earn Media.
That was great.
Yes.
Pretty impressive.
Did a great
Very good
job.
job.
Thank you.
All right, well, that brings us to our closed session. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant of Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, section 2.23711A29 concerning discussion of terms or scope of a contract, because public discussion would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
Got a motion by Mr. Rhodes, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council?
No.
Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll. Sorry, I was confused.
Mr. Owens,
Aye.
Ms. Pavilion,
Aye.
Ms. Quetch. Aye. And Mayor Webb.
Aye.
I was confused about what you're asking now. I don't think I did.
Thank you all. Where's the reading
Tomorrow?
Yes.
I thought it was Friday.
No,
I
it's
can't
Thursday.
It is, huh?
Where's the reading? I'm pretty sure. You look back and see, but I think, yeah, I have it on my calendar. It's the 17th.
Okay.
Call your brother up there and send it down.
My husband and I.
We should have it memorized.
Well, I'm planning to go.
Okay, I don't think any of these guys are going.
Well,
We are live.
I should go or not?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is Cam coming?
What is this?
The ag.
I don't know if I didn't RSVP, I don't know if Todd RSVP'd or not.
Okay.
If he's going.
All right, since we're back in session, I would
I have a little bit of crazy.
entertain a motion to come back into open session first.
I'll make that motion to come in back to open session.
All right, motion by Mr. Owens, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch, any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Aye. All right, and then
We just certified.
certify.
I move that the town council certify that a closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters, one specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session, and two lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
Mr. Owens, do you so certify?
I do certify.
Ms. Pillion.
I say certified.
Ms. Quetch.
I so certify.
And Mayor Webb.
I so certify. So that brings us out of closed session. We did add, if you remember, the appointment of a person to serve on the Veterans Advisory Board until 2025, I believe. So I would entertain or open the floor for somebody to make that appointment.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Tim Estes to the Veterans Advisory Board.
All right. Motion by Mr. Owens to appoint Tim Estes to serve on the Veterans Advisory Board until 2025. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion. Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Aye. So if I haven't missed anything, we're adjourned.
So, technically, we need to appoint an employee to be the facilitator of that board. I don't know if you ever did that.
Are we adjourned?
I said that
No,
before you
I take
said
that back. Yes, he started before. So we never appointed an employee to be the facilitator?
I don't think so, because we can't.
I'm sorry.
So I think that was the understanding of what,
I think you're right, and I know of one.
yeah.
I accept, if you're looking at me.
Okay, I thought you would already kind of agreed to do.
Yeah, I would open the floor then to make that formal, and for somebody to make
I'll make a motion to make Kim Kingsley our employee facilitator for the Veterans Advisory Council.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Ms. Killian, second by Vice Mayor Quetch to appoint Ms. Kim Kingsley to serve as the employee facilitator on the Veterans Advisory Board. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Now we're adjourned.
But you're the one that sent me the email, right?
Yes.